Good morning and welcome to PBS News Live special coverage of the inauguration of Donald Trump as the 47th President of the United States. I'm Jeff Bennett.
And I'm Amna Navaz. It is a frigid morning in Washington, D.C. as Donald Trump is set to make history, returning to the White House after 4 years out of office. He'll be just the second person to hold non-consecutive terms as president after Grover Cleveland in the late 1800s.
And today's ceremony will look very different than Mr. Trump's first inauguration 8 years ago. The cold weather forecast set off a scramble on Friday afternoon as the president-elect announced the oath of office, inaugural address, and even the parade will all be held indoors. Instead of crowds in the National Mall, you'll see Mr. Trump, his family, past presidents, and members of Congress, and other invited guests packed inside the Capitol Rotunda. You see a live picture of that right there. Thousands of others will be watching from an arena about a mile away, and many more of the 250,000 tickets that were distributed are now just commemorative.
Not since President Ronald Reagan's second inauguration 40 years ago have we seen a president take the oath underneath the Capitol dome. It was just 7 degrees that day, and while today isn't quite that cold, winds are also a factor, making it feel around 15 degrees here. Our congressional correspondent Lisa Desjardins is up on Capitol Hill. Lisa, tell us a little bit about the atmosphere now that this entire ceremony has moved indoors.
As you all said, it is a cold day here in Washington, but it's a beautiful day, bright and sunny outside. I can see the blue sky through the windows here, and the atmosphere is beyond upbeat. Most of the people here in the Capitol today are Republicans. They are here to celebrate President-elect, soon-to-be President Trump's inauguration. There are a few Democrats here as well, but it is a strange atmosphere because so many of the people who intended to be here could not be here because it is a much smaller footprint. I'll put it to you this way. On the top floors of the Capitol building, it's almost silent. The bottom floors, a beehive of activity as people get ready for that inaugural ceremony in the Rotunda. People will be packed in there. The orchestra that you'll hear has barely room to move their bows. I saw them practicing yesterday. But all in all, a very upbeat atmosphere here at the Capitol right now.
And give us a sense of the security preparations there too, Lisa.
Yeah, this is by far, I think, after 2021, the most secure inauguration we've ever seen. There are some 30 miles of perimeter fencing, many roads closed here in the Washington, D.C. area, including some major routes for traffic. This is a corridor, of course, for the entire eastern coast, but travelers in the Washington, D.C. area know they could be rerouted here. The fence itself is 8 feet or more high, and that is intentional to make sure that it cannot be climbed, cannot be pushed down. This is directly a response to January 6th and the fact that those low barriers there were easily pushed aside by the rioters and insurrectionists that day. But I will point out something else. Being here for the 2021 inauguration, which was just days after January 6th, as you all remember, I remember members of Congress, Democrats, wearing bulletproof vests to that inauguration. I didn't sense that same level of fear or concern from this one. Of course, that does have to do what you perceive the threat to be, and at that point it was Trump supporters on January 6th. But there is more of a feeling of security, and there is more security for this inauguration.
All right, our Lisa Desjardins up on Capitol Hill for us today. Lisa, we'll check back in with you in just a few. Meanwhile, to accommodate some of those who'd been hoping to watch the inauguration on the Mall, the inaugural committee arranged to use Capital One Arena here in D.C. That's home to the Washington Capitals, the Washington Wizards, and the Georgetown Hoyas, as well as concerts and other live events, but none like today's.
It can seat around 20,000 people. That's a fraction of the crowd that had been expected on the Washington Mall. Our Stephanie Sy is inside the arena where there is a watch party for the inaugural ceremony and where later the president-elect will attend the inauguration parade. Stephanie, what's the mood where you are? What are people telling you?
Well, Jeff and Amna, we were speaking to folks that arrived here early this morning, and these are the lucky ones. They waited in line for hours, some of them as early as 10 p.m. last night in those frigid temperatures to get in here. So despite the fact that the inauguration was moved, they are just grateful to be here, but they are fatigued and tired. They are also very determined. This feels a lot like you would expect any Trump rally. Of course, he had a rally here yesterday. the home of the Capitol, and the Wizards, as you can see, festooned in red, a color that has become synonymous with MAGA, and certainly that appears to be the core of the crowd here. Lots of red Make America Great hats, lots of people wearing their American flag garb. You know, really, since I arrived in D.C. yesterday, I could feel the intensity of Trump's fan base here. They come from all over the country. Some of them have driven for up to 12 hours, one from as far as California. You know, when I was in the hotel room yesterday, there was a group of people that all had T-shirts saying, "I love felons," and they had Trump's face on their T-shirts. There was a pickup truck when I arrived at the airport that had detailed Trump's face with a crown, and it was called the Trumpcinerator, this pickup truck. So just everywhere you look in the Capitol today, again, you feel that fervor, almost religious fervor of the Trump fans.
And Stephanie, Lisa was talking about the security posture around Capitol Hill. Tell us a little bit about what you're seeing there.
Well, you know, by the time you even get to the arena, you've been through what feels like 3 security perimeters. So it feels very secure in here. Of course, they're magnetometers, and everyone that came in here was thoroughly searched. So it feels like a very secure, hardened space here.
Stephanie Sy at Capital One Arena. Meantime, there have been a couple of early morning events at and near the White House, which our Laura Barone-Lopez has been watching. Laura, bring our viewers up to speed on what's transpired before we came on the air this morning.
Morning, Jeff. Yeah, so earlier this morning, President-elect Donald Trump arrived for tea with the Bidens after he went to service at St. John's Episcopal Church. And when he arrived for tea with President Biden and the First Lady, President Biden said to Trump, "Welcome home." And so they will be having tea with the Bidens, and then as soon as that is over, they are expected to head to the Capitol all together. And we do know that President Biden is leaving a letter for President-elect Trump, as is tradition. That's something that President Trump did as well last time around, despite 4 years ago President Trump not going to Biden's inauguration, whereas this year President Biden and the First Lady will be attending Trump's inauguration.
Laura, we know you've been talking to folks on the incoming Trump team. They have been signaling for a while, the president-elect himself, that there would be a flurry of activity on this day one in the way of executive action. What should we expect?
There's going to be a lot of executive actions today, Amna, and specifically on border and the immigration. We were told this morning by White House officials that there will be 10 total border immigration related executive orders. That includes declaring a national emergency at the southern border, which they say will allow President-elect Trump to be able to deploy military to the southern border. So far, they say they are only going to be having armed forces at the southern border, not necessarily within the actual United States. They also said that they will end catch and release, that they are going to designate criminal cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. And they also said that one of the executive orders is going to end asylum. So allowing for the immediate removal of migrants that are crossing the border, not allowing them to claim asylum. They didn't specify whether or not that was going to be that they were going to be doing that by reinstating Title 42, which requires a public health emergency declaration. And they also said that they are going to be ending birthright citizenship. That's expected to obviously, Amna, draw a number of challenges, given that that is protected under the 14th Amendment. But they say that there is language in the 14th Amendment that would allow the president to reinterpret that amendment and essentially decide that and end automatic birthright citizenship for children who were born to undocumented migrants. And there's a number of other executive actions that the president-elect is expected to take, including on DEI initiatives and ending federal funds to what they say promotes gender ideology, Amna.
We're seeing live picture there as the motorcade carries President Biden and President-elect Trump to the Capitol. Meanwhile, that's Laura Barone Lopez at the White House for us. Thank you, Laura.
And as we keep our eye here on the motorcade as it makes its way to the Capitol, let's bring in our panel. With us in the studio this morning are Amy Walter of the Cook Political Report with Amy Walter, Republican strategist Kevin Madden, and Tiffany Smiley, a Republican from Washington State who ran for Congress last year.
Also with us is David Brooks, columnist for the New York Times, Jonathan Capehart, associate editor of the Washington Post, and of course our very own Judy Woodruff. Thanks to you all for being here today. Judy, you heard what Laura had to say there about this flurry of executive action we're expecting today. That sets quite a tone, quite a message from day one from this incoming president.
That things are going to be different. And what we all know is that he comes into office the second time in much stronger shape than 8 years ago. He inherits a great economy. Jamie Dimon told me last summer it was the greatest economy in the world that the world had ever seen, he said. The IMF yesterday said it was the strongest in the world. Frankly, global developments are moving in a good direction, especially in the Middle East. He comes back into office with Congress that is Republican in both houses, but this time the leadership is loyal to Donald Trump. They were conservative Republicans the last time, this time Donald Trump. And again, his cabinet, this time we know this cabinet was chosen because of its loyalty to him.
What about that, Kevin Madden? President Trump is coming into office with this intentionally audacious show of force. It's also true that he is now term limited, and he has slim majorities in the House and Senate. So the idea is if he's able to enact any part of his agenda, he has to move fairly quickly. This is beyond what he's trying to spell out in his executive orders.
Yeah, I mean, I think the high level of determination that the president has, as well as his political allies and political activists that support the president around the country, is driven by the fact that he feels like he has this enormous mandate, this decisive victory that he won in November, as well as an advantage and I think a very clear mandate on the issues that he believes sent him here to Washington, which is to the economy, to address inflation, to get people feeling more confident about the direction of the country and the economy, and then to secure the border, to address issues like immigration. And so I think in these early steps of the new administration, he is going to move with speed, but I also think he's going to move with an incredible level of volume, which is that he's going to, put out as many of these executive orders. We're expecting close to 100 today, and really try to sort of overwhelm the opposition that he's expecting from Democrats in the Congress. So I think those will be the two charges that he feels like he has.
Shock and awe was the guidance we've been hearing, right, from the Trump team. David and Jonathan, can I ask you to just look at this moment here and weigh in on what could be unfolding inside this car? The outgoing president and the incoming president-elect riding together to the Capitol for Mr. Trump's swearing in. And just for context, this was not a moment we had back in 2021 because Mr. Trump did not stay around for Mr. Biden's swearing. There was no welcoming of him to the White House. David, just your thoughts on this moment.
Yeah, I don't know what they're talking about. Geritol, prune juice. I think, though, on the one hand, people have public hatreds and feuds and contempt, but they're professionals. And I tend to find when politicians get together, they are in the same business. I found that covering the Middle East, that the Israeli and the Palestinian negotiators, they hated each other, but they were in the peace process business. And these guys are in the same business right now. And so I'm sure it's shop talk.
Jonathan, what about the dissonance, though, that some Democrats might see, where Joe Biden's last official act as president was to extend these preemptive pardons to people because he was fearful of Donald Trump's retribution, and yet, on the other hand, he's extending to him all of these gestures that Mr. Trump denied him 4 years ago, meeting at the White House for coffee and tea, sharing the limo over to the Capitol. How do you see that?
I see it as President Biden showing that the office is bigger than one person, and that he's upholding a tradition that has always been there up until January 6, 2021, a peaceful transfer of power. These two men went at it when President Biden was on the campaign trail, and even after President Biden got off the campaign trail. And yet we see them riding in the beast headed to the Capitol because President Biden has enormous respect for the institutions of our democracy. And I think that's why we see the two of them in the limousine together. Also, having met both men, they are, to David's point, they're professionals. But I wouldn't be surprised if there was some very frank talk going on, in addition to President Biden being very courteous. I would expect also President-elect Trump to be very courteous because, as we have seen, he talks a good game, a very rough and aggressive game when the person's not in front of him. But once he is with them, it's a completely different story.
Amy, when you look ahead in terms of what we have a good indication we'll see, right, in the way of executive action, and the president moving very fast as he comes into office, especially compared to first term. He signed one executive order on day one back in 2017. This is clearly a strong message. Where are the American people on these issues? Is this what they want to see the president do?
It's a great question. As Judy pointed out, Trump is coming back into his second first term in much better shape than he was in 2017. The party is completely unified behind him. His favorable ratings are a little bit higher, not tremendously higher, but he's much more popular than when he left. He left with a 36% approval rating. He's now close to 47% approval rating. Kevin and I were talking before we went on air, just speaking about the two men in the car. Joe Biden's approval rating is as low as it's ever been. In fact, one of the lowest of a first-term president who was not reelected. So in that sense, he can feel like he has a mandate. Obviously, he won decisively and won the popular vote. But when you look at the polling, and this was a Fox News poll that came out recently, do you see that this president now has a mandate? Only 42% of voters said yes, they believe he has a mandate. Was Trump's success, do you think his success was because people really like Trump, or because it was a rejection of Biden and Harris? A majority said it was a rejection of Biden and Harris. So there are things that they do support. They do believe that he's going to do a better job on immigration. They want him to do that. The country is divided on what that means, and the way we ask that question, I think, is going to be really important about supporting deportations of people who are here illegally. But what they really do want to see is inflation tackled. And what the president is talking about right now, whether it's with tariffs or troops on the border, things like that, that is not necessarily going to help immediately with the things that people are the most interested in, and why so many people did support him in the first place.
And we should say the motorcade has just arrived at the U.S. Capitol. I'm not entirely sure of the camera position there. We may not see President-elect Trump and President Biden get out of the vehicle and make their way into the Capitol. But Tiffany, we heard Amy Walter say that Donald Trump is far more popular than he was 8 years ago. He's also way more prepared for the presidency. Help us understand how he's better positioned to not just articulate, but also enact his really ambitious agenda.
Well, I was at the inauguration in 2017, and it was an amazing day. Honored to be able to experience that. But you're right, Donald Trump was coming in, and everything was new to him. Now he has his cabinet picks, he has his nominees, he's in a strong position, and he understands the mandate that was sent down, that the American people want him to get to work. I believe in these next 100 days, we will start to see his approval ratings rise as he starts to deliver results. He is the creator of Art of the Deal. He knows how to get work done, and that's why the American people sent him there. I think as far as Biden, Trump is coming in to a country with Bidenomics. Perhaps that was a mistake for Biden to label his economic policy Bidenomics, because the American people really felt the effects of that. And it's an opportunity for Trump to come in and show what he can deliver.
How are his supporters seeing this vast array of executive orders? I've heard anywhere between more than 50 to 100 executive orders that he intends to sign today. Some will be serious and substantive, and others will just be conversation starters. I mean, what does the MAGA base really make of all that?
Yes, well, it's securing our border, and that's another reason why Donald Trump won. We have an open border. Every state is a border state in this country, and so obviously securing our border, protecting Americans first, and not only that, when you look at the economy, Trump also will deregulate so small businesses can run and flourish. And as far as tackling inflation, and in these executive orders, he will be unleashing American energy independence, which will kickstart, getting a grip on inflation.
We are seeing President Biden and President-elect Trump make their way into the Capitol. They are really shepherded by Amy Klobuchar, the senator there who leads the bipartisan group that organizes these inaugural events. And this is a live look inside the U.S. Capitol. That is Elon Musk, of course, in conversation with another tech leader.
We'll continue with live picture inside this room as well. This is, of course, where that swearing-in ceremony will unfold in just a matter of minutes. In the meantime, I want to bring in two more guests. Two former senators are also joining us. Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio and Republican Bob Corker of Tennessee. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. Senator Corker, let's begin with you. This is, however you look at it, quite a political comeback for President-elect Donald Trump. 4 years ago, a very different scene unfolding in that Capitol Rotunda when many of his supporters stormed it violently. What are you thinking about this day? How are you viewing today's proceedings?
Well, I'm thinking about the fact that every president wants to be the greatest president in modern history, or at least in their time. And I look at the setup that the president-elect has. It's incredible because what makes a great presidency is the context. Where is the world at that juncture? And if you look at the opportunities that exist right now in the Middle East, because of what has happened with Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran and Syria, you look at the tremendous opportunity in Ukraine to come to a settlement. Both entities, both Russia and Ukraine, are tired of fighting, and so there's an opportunity to do there that's something that hopefully is great for democracy. You look at China and what's happening within their country. There's just tremendous international opportunities. And then domestically, with the immigration issue, hopefully it'll go beyond just dealing with the borders, but solving the entire issue, which be tremendous economically for our country and put a big issue behind us. Dealing with the other issues that have been mentioned, I just think the context is set for the president-elect to be a great president, and the question is, will he rise to that occasion? He has such opportunity for all the reasons you mentioned, the excitement, the fact that Democrats actually, instead of coming in with resentment right now, they're actually realizing that they got it wrong, that they made mistakes, and they're wanting to move a little bit in the direction more to the center. So it's a great opportunity for our country. It's a great opportunity for him. And hopefully that is what he'll set out to do.
We are watching as members of the president's cabinet, his cabinet nominees, and a few others make their way into the Capitol. Senator Brown, you heard Senator Corker there say that this is a moment where Democrats are trying to take stock of what they got wrong. Is that how you're viewing this moment? Reflect on the day for us.
Yeah, Bob, nice to see you. It's a great president was one who wants to bring people together. And, the executive orders are fine, and they will make progress on some issues, I assume. But people are unhappy. People voted for Trump in large part because they've seen a rigged system against them. They've seen corporate profits go up. They've seen CEO pay go up. Stock buybacks, they've seen their own wages stagnant. They've seen huge numbers of lost industrial jobs. They've seen really since NAFTA. And that sickness has infected our society in terms of lost jobs and lost wages, while the rich get richer and everybody else struggles. And to see a president surrounding himself with California billionaires, I'm hopeful it's an inaugural speech that he talks about substance and talks about workers. He won his campaign in part by talking about workers, but I would give one example of something he could do. A judge in East Texas, at the behest of the Texas Chamber of Commerce, a Trump judge, one decision, one judge about 6 weeks ago made a ruling on overtime that took away overtime from 4 million workers across the country. The president could fix that. And if he really, politics isn't left or right. I don't think it's a middle matter of Democrats moving to the center or whatever. It's who's siding on. And I want to see a president who just doesn't talk that game, but actually walks that walk and stands up for workers and making their lives better.
We're continuing with live picture inside the Capitol here. Gentlemen, thank you so much for staying with us. Judy, this idea that President Biden on his way out was warning about this tech oligarchy. Inside the room here, you see the CEO of Google, you see Elon Musk, who has taken on a very prominent role for this incoming administration as well. There's sort of a lot of ideas bumping up against each other in this moment.
No question. And I think, as we've been hearing, the question will be not just what will President Trump say in his inaugural address today about that? Will he address any of these contradictions, or will he, we assume he's going to focus on the positive. But, as Tiffany was saying, these first 100 days are an opportunity for him to make a difference. But squaring the circle when it comes to coming to a hard, solid agreement on government spending, that's a tough one. Coming to the details of immigration, these are hard questions that Republican leaders, Republican members are going to be dealing with. And today we're about celebrating, we're about appreciating, but the hard work starts tomorrow.
Former Vice President Mike Pence in attendance. Tiffany, help us understand the significance of that, because the two men, Pence and Trump, had not spoken directly, had not interacted since the funeral a few weeks ago for the late President Jimmy Carter.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's significant that he is there and just showing support and solidarity. As a country, we are the United States of America. We're the best country in the world because of our people. And so he is showing that he is there in support of President Trump and moving forward. And look, grateful for Vice President Pence's service and everything that he has given and served our country, with dignity and honor. But it's also time to move forward. And President Trump is, ready to do that. He's made that very clear. But it's significant, and I think it shows just the unity of the party and the opportunity going forward.
We see a live picture there. Seated in front of President-elect Trump's nominees for his cabinet, there are Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Sundar Pichai, and Elon Musk. I understand Lisa Desjardins, who's reporting for us on Capitol Hill right now, has a little bit more to share in terms of the logistics of how this is all going to play out. Lisa?
Yeah, hi guys. I think I've just lost my connection with you, but I'll tell you just a couple of things going on here at the Capitol. One thing with the changed footprint here with the moving the ceremony indoors, there is actually an entirely separate viewing area that has been moved into the Capitol Visitor Center, which is an underground facility. I went by there this morning, and we understand that President-elect Trump, once after inauguration, plans to go by there. Those are where some people who had tickets for outdoors will be able to sit and watch the speech, and then he will give remarks, we understand, down there after his inaugural address. Obviously, very coveted positioning there. Also want to talk about Democrats. You may notice as you're looking up in the Rotunda there, you may see some purple colors. Democrats tell me that several of them are wearing those colors because it is the color that Hillary Clinton wore when she conceded, that Kamala Harris wore a kind of purple shade when she conceded. And to them, they say it's a color of both bipartisanship, and one frankly told me it's the color of mourning. Republicans were looking for those red colors. The Trump red is very well known up there. But one other note, this is a working building. We do expect some business today. We do expect votes in committee on two Trump nominees, Pete Hegseth as Department of Defense and Marco Rubio for Secretary of State. The Rubio vote may actually get through the entire Senate today. That is the hope for Republicans, that there will be a Secretary of State confirmed today as well. And one last note, that Rotunda is such an incredible space. It is hallowed ground for anyone that's ever been there. And I looked this up. It was finished in 1824, so just about the 200th anniversary for this occasion. And you'll notice the presidents around President-elect Trump as he is sworn in.
Lisa Desjardins. Lisa, thanks so much. David Brooks, one of the things I'm struck by watching all of this unfold in that beautiful space, as Lisa rightly notes, is Donald Trump's resilience. I think most people, if you were to ask them at the end of the day on January 6th, 2021, would Donald Trump be reelected? I think most people would have said no. Here are former President Bill Clinton, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton making their way in. The fact that Donald Trump was not just reelected, but survived 2 impeachments, 2 assassination attempts, 4 criminal trials, 1 conviction, and yet he's on his way to take the oath of office as the 47th president. The sweep is just remarkable.
You know, it's a life lesson. You go back to Richard Nixon's career, the guy was counted out for dead a million times, and it's the same with Donald Trump. He had some help from the Democrats. I think the trials and the indictments helped him. There were other things that helped him, but he kept going, and he's in control of the party. The thing I'm looking for today is this an electoral monarchy or is it an ideological movement? And what I mean by electoral monarchy, and this is what happens, say, in Turkey and El Salvador and other countries, you elect a person and they're all about themselves. It's transactional. They'll flip-flop policies if they feel it'll help them. And we've seen Trump do that on H-1B visas, on TikTok, things like that. And that's what all the tech moguls are hoping for. An ideological movement, it's more what Steve Miller wants or Steve Bannon wants. And what it's all about the ideology, it's all about the populism, it's about the nationalism. And I'm looking for indications, what kind of president are we going to get?
Well, let's talk about that with Laura Brown Lopez. As we see a picture there, former President Bush, First Lady Laura Bush making their way in, members of the Trump family now, and here now is former President Barack Obama walking into the Capitol as well. Laura, as you watch all of this unfold as well, we think back to Mr. Trump's first inaugural address. The phrase that stood out, that stayed with everyone, has been this idea of American carnage. We've heard that this will be more of a message of unity. What do we expect to hear?
Committee co-chair, Mr. Steve Witkoff.
That's right, Amna. The president-elect is expected to give a much more unifying tone. The incoming administration says that he views this moment very differently than he viewed his election in 2016. And ultimately, when he was elected in 2016 and entered the White House after that election, he was met with a much larger resistance and viewed and was also much more amenable to establishment Republicans, many of whom resisted him much more back then. This time around, he very much has the Republican Party around him. He feels as though he has much more control and support across that Republican Party. You don't see as many of the Republicans in office anymore that were willing to stand up to him, whether it's Mitt Romney or the late John McCain. And so this is a very different moment for the incoming President Trump, who really considers himself to have a mandate, despite the fact that there is some polling recently from AP that shows that voters don't necessarily support mass deportations. They support the deportations of immigrants who have committed violent crimes, who have committed crimes, but going beyond into wider deportations, which we expect the president-elect to do because they have forecasted that, and so has his border czar, Tom Homan. That may be something that the wider American public doesn't necessarily support according to polling. That being said, given the calls this morning with White House officials, this administration is expected to launch what they call the biggest deportation effort in history. And they are cracking down not just on illegal immigration, but also legal immigration. And in those executive orders that we talked about a little bit earlier, another one that they are going to issue today is they are suspending refugee admissions for at least 4 months. So that's a crackdown on legal immigration, Amna.
Kevin Madden, as folks have been instructed to take their seats there, we were seeing the tech billionaires, the head of Apple, the head of Google, Elon Musk there standing. You see Mark Zuckerberg, head of Meta, standing amid Mr. Trump's cabinet nominees. For people who voted for Donald Trump because they were concerned about the price of groceries, they were concerned about the affordability crisis, how does this tableau strike the American people, do you think?
Well, I think there may be a little bit of a disconnect, but you have to remember that so many of the president's supporters are always happy to support anybody who has similar alliance with Donald Trump and his agenda than they do. I think also, look, a lot of Trump supporters will point out to you that Joe Biden and the Democrats were perfectly happy and thrilled to have the support of Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, and Elon Musk when he was supporting Democrats. So I think, that hypocrisy, I think, will be something that fuels a lot of the president's supporters, as well as his allies on Capitol Hill. And I think they're much more focused now on, again, the determination is to put this mandate that they believe that they got and that they received in the fall of 2024 into action on the first day, and then really use that momentum to get big things done. What Trump supporters want more than anything is a reversal of what they saw over the last 4 years from Joe Biden.
Tiffany, I see you shaking your head in agreement. And there's this truism in politics that personnel is policy, and that has always been especially true for Donald Trump. Help us understand that in the context of the folks that he's selected to enact his agenda.
Yeah, well, some of these billionaires and tech CEOs weren't with Donald Trump in the past, and now it's clear that they are. They know that it's a net positive when you are partnered with Trump, and I think it also speaks to the movement that is going on in this country, that President Trump is able to bring in people from all walks of life to solve the complex problems that are facing our country.
We see the Supreme Court justices making their way into the Rotunda right now. Of course, Chief Justice John Roberts will be